Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second day of our conference. To begin, we will have a panel on the promotion of environmental sustainability in the context of European cultural capital. I'll call on to stage Summer Frosblom, sorry, I apologize for that, Josepina and Paula Abreu as moderator. How nice it is to see you here again. I'm Rui Monteiro. I was asked to replace Paula Abreu, who was supposed to be the moderator of this panel, but she had an unforeseeable impediment. Today's panel will be focusing on environmental sustainability and the link with European cultural capitals in the context of a strategic program that cultural European capitals are required to follow for the sustainable development of the territories. We will have two case studies. Through their strategic cultural program, they work with this big challenge, the environmental challenge, in the case of Olo and Aveiro by Josepina. So I will give them the floor immediately without further ado. I will give the floor to our speakers immediately, but allow me to first start by saying a few words about European cultural capitals and the challenge that they are currently faced with. We could not avoid inserting European cultural capitals in our program because we have applied for 2027 to European cultural capital by Montemor-o-Velho. And this is one way of internationalization of cities through applications and through culture. We held a conference and we had a panel with the 4 cities, candidate cities of the Centro region. This was 2 years ago in 2019. The process is ongoing, and I'll come back to that. But we decided that we had to insert the European cultural capitals in the program. Portugal in 2027 will have a European cultural capital, as I mentioned. It will be sharing this title with a city of Latvia. It was selected this year, Leia by, I believe, the Latvian city that was selected, together with another Portuguese city. The program is already known. The program began in 1985, and ever since it has adjusted to social and urban challenges because it's mainly a cultural program for cities, and it has adjusted itself with increasing demand, rigor, and it tries to be a model of urban development through culture, long-term urban development. We departed from a concept of European cultural capital as a festival of arts and culture in 1985, and now we have a concept of urban development through culture. Portugal has had several European cultural capitals that illustrate the different stages of the program, the different phases. Lisbon in 1994, Porto in 2001, Guimarães in 2012, and Next, we don't know which city will be a European cultural capital in 27. The process takes about 5 years. The cities are nominated about 5 years before the year of European capital. And 4 or 5 years are not that long because this is a very morose process. The process is currently taking place in Portugal. The tender was launched around a year and a half ago. The cities applied. There are 2 phases. The pre-selection phase, which has ended. It occurred in March this year, of the current year, and Portugal had 11 cities that applied in the pre-selection phase, which, considering average and looking at other countries, is actually a very high number, considering the size of the country. Romania applied with 14 cities, and it's a much bigger country than Portugal. So we could actually discuss just this issue of 11 applications, 11 cities that applied to European Cultural Capital. We believe that that is a sign of the value that is awarded to culture. And 4 cities were pre-selected. Out of these 4, we have 1 city in the Centro region of the country, which is Aveiro. The other 3 cities are Braga, Ponta Delgada, and Évora. The final assessment evaluation will take place in December of this year, but the referees will also be visiting the cities. There is an application file, and there is also a meeting with the jury. So these are the different stage, the current situation, the current status being 4 pre-selected cities applying to the final phase. And this is why we decided to invite Aveiro to take part in this panel, because in their concept they have included environmental sustainability in their application program. This was a city. The Finnish city Oulu was selected last year for 2026. So they will be cultural capital 1 year before the Portuguese city. So they will be also sharing with us their experience as candidates. So we have here a candidate, Aveiro, and a city that has been selected and is preparing for 2026. So these were our 2 guests. Samuel, please take the floor.
Bom dia, good day. And really much thanking Christina and Rui to inviting me here in this beautiful town and beautiful country. I come totally opposite side of Europe, so the most northern parts of Europe, but I think it makes a good twist for our collaboration. So I have only 10 minutes time, so I need to be really quick. Usually it takes 2 hours, but now let's do it in 10 minutes. I will tell shortly a story about European Capital of Culture, what we do, and especially what we try to do in terms of environmental sustainability. Our main concept is cultural climate change, and it's a double-edged sword. There's a 2 dimension, 2 meanings. And to put it short and simple, we want to make inspirational future in a sustainable way. So we want to help those areas of Europe, for example ours in the north, which is not in the metropole areas of Finland, but more or less hinterland or edge of the Europe. We want to create make a great, good future with creativity, with culture and arts, give people hope to stay and live there where they are. But everything what we do needs to be, of course, made in a sustainable way. And of course, in our case, the cultural climate change and the sustainability is a social sustainability and environmental sustainability. But in this presentation, I focus more on environmental sustainability. Just some words about the themes what we discussed yesterday, about the big global challenges, how they affect the European Capital of Culture, what this institution should do. And I think that the responsibility of arts and cultural sector has been always and will be to ask the questions. If there are big challenges in the world, we are the ones who need to ask questions first and raise the issue, address even the hardest issue. We need to do it. It's our responsibility. And that's why European Capital of Culture cannot neglect the big global challenges. It needs to take it as a core of the programming, as a core of the message. But then, of course, we are also doing production, a project. We need to react. We need to create a B plan for things. And as we saw in 2020, the European Capital of Culture opening in Galway, the opening ceremony was cancelled because extreme weather conditions, the storm from the Atlantic came. After that, all those Rijeka from Croatia and Galway, the European Capital of Culture years was quite much ruined because of COVID. And then we saw the horrible Ukrainian war. And these things cannot be affected for the way we do and what we do. What we have done now, how to react to the extreme weather condition, is to the concept of waterproof culture. So, for example, it means that perhaps not to have one big opening ceremony. Instead, we will have many smaller opening ceremonies in our region. We need to do also things inside, not put all the eggs in the same basket. We need to hybridize our events. We have made a promise that 80% of our cultural offering will be also be available with the digital platforms. We reacted to this awful crisis in Ukraine. We had already had in our bid book a project called Peace Machine. And way back then it was about hate speech and different kind of conflicts between people. But now, after the war, it's sad but true, but it's really on the time. The Peace Machine will be international media artwork which brings people together into dialogue, talk about peace. And overall, I think that culture and European Capital of Culture needs, and they can lead the creative and sustainable change in the world through art thinking, through mechanisms, how the brains of artists works and how they can see the different kind of futures, different kind of scenarios where we are going. So our location, as I said, is on the other end of the Europe. Oulu is the biggest city in the most northern parts of Europe, the Norway, Sweden and Finland. And I have not so much time to go so deep to our city, but I could say that the nature, the ICT, art and technology, children's culture, education are the big things in our city. But the really close connection to nature is one of the biggest things. Our city is a city of 4 really different seasons. We have the summertime when the sun doesn't set at all, and then really dark winter periods and so on. So people in Oulu live from the nature, from the northern nature. We have a really big area, Oulu plus 32 municipalities. It's from the Russian border to the Swedish border, and from the Finnish Lapland till the more southern areas with sandy beaches and things like that. What European Capital of Culture can do is to make a change. You have to analyze your challenges in your city. You have to think that how the things you do, how the cultural projects you do, how they will develop the things you have set, the goals you have set, and then you have to monitor what you do. And for Oulu, for example, the cultural climate change machine, let's say, we hope it turns our image as a hard technological city to more vibrant, more culture-oriented. We hope that from the unbalanced community with the culture we can make more well-being and community among people. And we hope that our location as a, not in the center of Finland, but in the really edges of Europe, will be the strong thing for us. The stories of the edges of Europe will become interesting, and our region will be known as a creative region in future as well. We have three main themes how we will deliver the cultural climate change. Brave Hinterland is a story about North, it's the story about edges of Europe. Also, we want to connect ourselves into similar kind of cities in all over Europe. Cool Contrast is a contrast in our nature, but contrast between people and different kind of groups, and we want to build peaceful, creative dialogue between those people. So let's say, for example, in our city, we want to make bridge between artists and ICT engineers. And Wild City is about creative city making, about the sense of community through arts and culture. And then about the promotion of environmental sustainability, and I think they can be seen two ways. Art can address its issue. So cultural climate change itself can be the topic for the project. On the other hand, we need and we want to help all our projects in the cultural program, in our ECOC, to help to work in a sustainable way. And in fact, when we have an open call and when we make a contract with our project, there is a commitment for each project they need to sign that they will deliver certain critical sustainable issues with their projects. Some concrete examples of our project. One is a big flagship program called Climate Clock. We will make 6 public artworks within our region, and they all reflect the changing environment, the northern nature, and they somehow will react to the nature in the nearby. And this example is not from Oulu, it's from Leeuwarden, which was the Cultural Capital 2018. It's called the Ice Fountain. It's changing all the time. The solar panels are making the ice to the fountain, and it reminds people in Netherlands from the times when the canals had the ice surface and people were skating on the canals, but they don't do it anymore. Sad but true. This is polar bear pitching, which is existing event in our city. And now in 2026, the climate innovation, business climate innovation will be pitched from the ice hole. And they have a 1 minute time to do the pitch for the jury, and the best pitch will get the prize. And this is me playing in the ice hole in the opening. Frozen People is an electronic music festival on the surface of the frozen sea in Oulu, and we did the first time now, a couple of months ago, the pilot, and in the 2026, of course, it will be hopefully international big event. And in this electronic music festival, most of the electricity will be produced by people cycling there. Many of our projects will be in nature, appreciating nature, and of course they can be the concert venues will be you have to go there in a paddling or hiking, but using sustainable ways to reach them. Of course, technological issues, as I said, we need to hybridize more our events, our culture offering, even though it's not the same thing. But I believe that the combination of live and digital is the best solution what we can get. In our program, we are reusing a lot of old premises. We are not building new palaces for culture. We are going into old ones, and we are turning the old places to the creative use. In Oulu, the world poorest food, Arctic food, we will have a label for our food that is Arctic Food Lab label, and we will give it to the products from our area which are made in a certain sustainable way in our city. Then I'm ending really soon, but then just a few words about the second thing, that how we will help our project to act in a sustainable way. Those projects I presented was about the environmental sustainability, and of course not all of our project, the content is not the environmental sustainability, but they need to do what they do in a sustainable way. So we have already started the EU project called the Most Sustainable European Capital of Culture, and it means that this project will make criteria how arts and culture can act in a sustainable way, and these criteria are attached to our open call for future projects. So if you want to work with us, you need to fulfill the criteria what we have done in this project. This is really simple, basic things. Everybody can start to use them already today, but just to remind a couple things and about sustainable things. So choose your venue or local wisely and use sustainable transport, use green energy and energy efficient tech and equipment, provide local vegetarian food, circulate, manage your waste, consider procurement and reduce materials, do not waste water and do not spill wastewater to the environment. And one picture from one of our festival where the waste actually will be a big artwork in the nature of Rukakuusa. And then I will invite all of you to watch our open call. It will be open in next autumn from October to December, and it's international open call if you have a great project on your mind. So please contact us. You will find everything you need from our website. Thank you.
Bom dia. Muito obrigado pelo convite. É muito bom estar aqui presente. O meu nome é José Pina, eu faço parte da Comissão Executiva da Candidatura de Aveiro 2027. E, portanto, vamos proceder então à apresentação do nosso projeto. Portanto, a candidatura de Aveiro a 2027 tem um tema central no seu programa cultural e em todo o seu contexto, que é a cultura como quinto elemento. Como vocês conhecem, Aveiro é um território muito marcado pela questão geográfica, pela questão do clima, pela sua paisagem, e a partir daqui nós criamos um conceito de projeto que é inspirado não só nestas realidades do território, como também em algo que nós sentimos que podia fazer uma diferença face às outras cidades candidatas e também face ao processo de candidatura. E esse facto foi identificar a cultura como
stand out from the other applicants. And culture is almost like the cement that links up and connects all other elements. So departing from the elements land, water, air and fire, we picked up on our geography, the economy of the territory, and our major concern, which is public policy management for the city and the region. All of this tied up. As you can see from this picture, Aveiro is a city which is very much impacted by geography, climate change, and nature, and the presence of man in that nature. Our application was based on the theme fifth element with culture. And what is our vision? We wanted to, in Aveiro, assume that its ecosystem, habits, urban planning, and territorial development be grounded on this common concern, which is not unique to Aveiro, which is looking forward into the future, and looking forward into the future with an eye on sustainability and environmental concern, the environmental dimension. And of course, we are well aware that we cannot do all of this on our own. And therefore, our application, and only the process alone was very important for us, because it gave us an opportunity to call out to all of the inhabitants of the city and the region to participate in this process. And we are convinced that with all of the inputs, different ideas, different visions, and the sense of belonging to a territory, we believe that both at the local and national and European level, we can give our contribution to something that we believe is very important and is part of our agendas, which is sustainability. So this is a project that has the ambition of contributing towards the construction of a growingly sustainable and resilient Europe. And we want our territory to be a living lab of co-creation, participation, not only of cultural projects, but everything that concerns the dynamics of development, where culture has a very important role to play. As far as the preparation of our process was concerned, the promoter, let me just add, is the municipality of Aveiro, but co-promoters were also the Intermunicipal Association of 15 municipalities, the University of Aveiro, and the Industrial Association. And together we developed a global strategy for the territory of Aveiro, city and region. And we drew up a strategy, a program of cultural strategy from 2019 to 2030, together with other municipalities in the region. We adopted a compact, a cultural compact, 2030 cultural compact that envisages the participation of all municipalities and the positioning of Aveiro on the international plane. So how have we been developing our program? Well, with 5 points as our starting point. First, we opened up a local call, a national call, to call upon all artists and cultural agents to participate and provide their inputs from the cultural sector, creative and cultural sector of the region. Secondly, we reached out to curators, artists and agents, both Portuguese and national, to also contribute with their projects to the program. Thirdly, we reached out to the local communities, not only of the municipality of Aveiro, but of the surrounding regions. And then we established different partnerships and networks with other cities which were either applicants as together with us or had already been selected in previous years. And we reached out to Olo, for example, because their concerns were also our concerns, and also because they address an area that is of interest to us, which is a technological area. What are the principles that are covered by our cultural program, which we addressed in our pre-selection phase? First, 0% carbon. And how do we intend to do so? Well, through several mechanisms included in our program, but not only, to reduce and make up for our ecological footprint during the event and the following years, to be 100% accessible. And this is crucial for us. This is strategic to us. We have a partnership with national and international structures, which will, in this long-term strategy for Aveiro, will allow us to implement an accessible and participated project. And it's not only a question of tearing down physical barriers. We want to reach out to other audiences. It doesn't make sense to us to invest significantly in culture. The municipality has been investing since 2016 without working with people. This would be counterintuitive and not natural. And then we have also included in our cultural program a 24/7 digital dimension in order to prepare ourselves for events similar to that of COVID, which would possibly not allow us to hold certain events in presence. So we needed a plan B. Under these principles, we identified these areas which are sustainability, democracy, cohesion, and resilience. And linked to each of these areas, we have four tools for the development of the program. And all of this is part of what we have called a dream box, from where everything unfolds: the process, the matrix, the concept, and our application. Living Place Labs is a space we want to create, and it will be created regardless of whether we are selected or not. We want to implement this close to the fish market, which is a strategic location of the city, in the city. And we want to ensure that this space that is abandoned, we want to transform this into a project that will be used to work on topics like the oceans. Sustainability will be used for the development of different projects, and we'll ask designers, architects, artists to participate in the project. We have identified a group of projects that you will find here in green. And these are the projects that we intend to implement in this place in 2027, but more specifically from 2025 onwards. We also will have the Creative Change Academy, which will be implemented in a school, which we want to become the landmark of Aveiro at the European level even, where we want to hold or deliver education, training, and that we want to have the capacity to host up to 80 artists at the same time. It will have also administrative areas, possibly also provide housing to our professional orchestra. And from there onwards, we want to develop a dynamics of different disciplines, including art on the street. And we want it to be a memory of entities, because linked to the space we will have the district and the municipal archive. So all creations developed in this territory, we want them to be created based on the memory of the city and the region. And there, creators will find all materials, all documents that they need for the development of this project. The projects identified, among the projects identified, some are already ongoing, and others are new. And in this space, they will find the inspiration for the development of the contents that will be presented at the events that are mentioned here, or during the 2027 European Cultural Capital. The Community Culture Club is a network of clubs, informal clubs that take place all over the city. And let's say, for example, we have a group of people who enjoy stamp collection. So they create a group, a club, and they can meet in a space that is offered to them. And this applies to anything. If, for example, a group of people want to create a poetry club or a reading club, they can do so. We want to develop these projects that have been identified here, and all of them, with the exception of First Impressions, are all new projects that are being created or co-created under the program. The Artistic Intelligence Factory will also be a landmark in the city and is directly related to the University of Aveiro. It will be installed in an old factory, and the idea is to create here a space that will foster the development of digital arts, technology, and art with a technological dimension linked to culture and the creative and cultural sector. Some of these projects, we believe, will be incubated here in this space. Createc and one other already ongoing. And then there are a series of other new projects whose pilots have already been presented. This will probably be the largest infrastructural legacy that our project will deliver. If we are selected. So this is, in fact, subject to our election as cultural capital, because its budget is quite substantial. Our application was developed in collaboration with other cities which are also applicants or were cultural capitalists in previous years, but also in collaboration with other Portuguese-speaking countries. And have I exhausted my time? The speaker asks. I'll try to speed up, he says. We also developed a participation program that began in 2021 for the co-creation, ideation, and development and hearing process. This started online. We tried to cover all areas that we believed made sense to bring into the program. These are some of the moments that were portrayed and recorded of the hearing process and of the public dissemination process. We also tried to convey through our application and our values of hope, resilience. This is the communication of our open call, and this is the moment that some of us have already gone through, which is when we presented our project to the jury. Now we have entered a new phase of our process. This is a part of the process that we are implementing together with Tholo. It is part of our application. This was a recent event held on May 14th. We asked all agents of the city to participate in this event. The organization only provided or ensured the logistics and technical components. Everything else was delivered by the agents, and these are different moments in our application process and different moments of communication. And this was a visit that we had to Malmö, which is a candidate to 2029, and they chose Aveiro as a case study and perhaps in the future to establish partnerships. The next action will take place on July 21st, and you're all invited to participate. So our candidature invites all creative and cultural agents of the region to not only to get to know our cultural program that we have applied with, and also to submit the projects that they believe are aligned with our program. So in Aveiro, we think that we have gone into what we believe is the most beautiful moment of the whole process that we hope will take us to 2027. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, José Pina, for such a clear presentation of the process. I would immediately open the floor to questions from the audience. We are coming to the end of our time for this panel. And although we are focusing on the environment as the theme of this panel, please feel free to ask any other questions. So if you want to ask questions outside of the environmental topic, please feel free to do so. To both of our speakers. I'm a doctoral student of sociology from Porto. I am currently working on my thesis precisely on the cultural capital cities of Porto and Guimarães. I had more than one question that popped up in my mind when I was listening to the two speakers, because the concept of sustainability has far from being exhausted. You have 2 minutes. Sorry, have 2 minutes, not 40. Please. Well, I apologize. Well, by giving me only 2 minutes, then I'll have to skip immediately to the end. But I didn't want it to be unpleasant. I think that the purpose of these conferences, not only of this one, but of other conferences, sins in between inverted commas, because the experts have 2/3 of the time and the audience only has 2 minutes to express itself. I think that you should rebalance all of this. But having said this, research and studies that addressed the complex concept of sustainability began in the 1970s. In the 1990s, John Alkerton presented the concept of triple bottom line, based on 3 pillars: economic, environmental, and social. So sustainability was linked to economic prosperity and social sustainability. In the last 2 decades, we saw an increase, significant increase, in the intensity of this research. And I apologize, but the gentleman is reading too fast to be able to interpret. He seems to be reading what sounds like an essay. He is mentioning different cultural agendas that have included the dimension of sustainability linked to the social, education, and economic dimensions. And I really apologize, but I'll have to interrupt because it is virtually impossible to follow the gentleman. Fernando, I apologize. This model of conference is not democratic. It's not at all democratic. We have much more time on this side than on that side. But there are other fora that provide opportunities for all to provide their input and favor other kinds of discussion. But right now, this is the model that we have and which we will have to live with at least until this afternoon. We are running out of time. We have here a panel with 2 excellent speakers with 2 incredible projects, and we need to ask questions. I need to ask you to please ask a question directly. What I was trying to say is to speak of environmental sustainability is only part of a more complex problem. Indeed, that is a comment. Do you wish to ask a question, or do you want them to react to your comment? Yes, what I'm trying to say is that environmental sustainability is not wrong, it's not wrongly placed here, but it is a reductive and partial outlook of sustainability, perspective of sustainability, because it is ultimately excluding culture. That's essentially what I wanted to ask. And unfortunately, you interrupted me, so I couldn't be clearer. But would you like to comment?
Presentation in the beginning, I tried to say that our concept of cultural climate change, there the sustainability, it's not only environmental sustainability, it covers the social sustainability and many things. How can we make future in a way that it's in a moral, ethical, but also in a culturally in good balance. And if I understood right, you are totally right. But this focus in this our session was about the environmental sustainability. But as such, sustainability for us also is much more bigger issue.
Eu também partilho pouco do que acabaste de referir, porque para mim A questão da sustentabilidade não é só, obviamente, ambiental, também é a sustentabilidade social, como foi referido, de públicos, pode ser de dinâmicas, whatever. Agora, é óbvio quando, na minha perspectiva, e aquilo que tem sido o foco da nossa preocupação no processo, é que quando nós olhamos para o território e para o que queremos desenvolver a médio e longo prazo, nós temos uma realidade muito evidente em Aveiro, nossa região, e que é uma realidade à escala europeia e mundial, que é...
At the European level, the climate emergency, we have new ways of life, new ways of relating to other people, more sustainable relations that we help us provide for a more sustainable planet. So our program was very much cross-cutting. Cut across sustainability from a climate perspective, from the perspective of behavior, the underlying causes, and how we can contribute to the resolution of these challenges. And they were crucial for our process. So when we were invited to take part in this panel, we immediately replied yes, not only because we felt that this was a very important topic, and also because we thought that it was nuclear and it cut across the concept of sustainability. Fernando, would you like to react to this? But still, I think that your approach was very much environmental, from the perspective of environmental approach, but it does not respond to the complexity of the concept. Good afternoon. Good morning. I have a question that I think that could be is mostly a curiosity. So thinking of the concept of sustainability, sensu lato, my question is, what happens when I can no longer lead or coordinate or manage this project? So what does my action leave in the territory? When we think of, for example, assembling a European cultural capital, and fortunately it increasingly brings the participation of territorial agents. So what are the mechanisms in place once the European cultural capital ends? How can we guarantee the sustainability of everything that is in motion so that the agents, cultural agents, are already self-organized? So what are the systems that exist to guarantee the sustainability of the participatory process, but also for the future management of everything that is being built and developed now? This is a question that we also had, but allow me to just add another dimension to it, which is the political dimension, and to what extent your projects can have a legacy, just as environmental or cultural policy of the city is done in the city. So Martha asked about civil participation, but what about the political dimension? Samu, Giuseppina? I'll try to be very brief and straight to the point. The question you asked is very interesting, and for us, it was part of our application. The application, our candidature, had two moments in the process. The moment of developing the candidature and then the implementation. And in both, you find exactly what you mentioned. What is this all for? We asked ourselves. And for us, the process will help develop the capacity of the sector, develop the means that the sector needs, but also have all stakeholders work together under dynamics that are not available to them on a daily basis. So someone has a project, for example, he or she needs to relate to his colleagues, to work on the topics of participation, mobility, access, sustainability. I think this will be one of our legacies. On the other hand, this is a political process. It has always been assumed as such. That has also been our reference. It is not the result of an intention of a vision of one person, but rather of a vision that was subject to public evaluation. Now, our mayor was elected. He was elected by us. So it is not political from a personal dimension, but in the future, what we'll have is this process of development. Of course, what we have here is our application. But in practice, what we are saying, what we want to be in 2027 and by 2027. And what I showed here are some examples, but a few examples are of what is part of our application, with the involvement of artists, of agents, their inputs to the territory for a more sustainable development of the territory. So that is our legacy. And in our project, we are predicting what we want Aveiro to be from 2027 onwards. But for our application, we identified what we were from 2019 to 2027. We cannot have a significant peak of dynamics and activity and then have a fall. That cannot happen. So all of the projects, infrastructures, and funding that are being prepared will have political implications that are part of the our town halls program, but foresee a continuity and continuation after 2027 for that legacy.
This question is the most important when we are building European Capital of Culture, and at the same time it's the most hardest, because I think in many times the European Capital of Culture year or the process itself can be super magnificent, but after that it fails to keep on the level in the several years. In our case in Oulu, we are not building one festival year, we are building a process. It's a learning process, and the most important thing is to help cultural and creative actors to build their capacity, learn new things, network in the European level, and in this case learn about accessibility, and they have ability to test new things and kind of tackle the future challenges. So it's a learning process, and the values or the spirit of European Capital of Culture in Oulu, I hope that it will be in our community many years, even decades after this. But it's not the easy question. It needs a lot of work and commitment from the 2030s onwards.
Okay. Bem, obrigada, Samu e José Pina, e obrigada a todos. Eu diria que...
Thank you very much, Samu and José Pina. I would ask the audience to please keep an eye on everything that is going on in Portugal and in Europe, because there are many other European cities that are preparing their applications. Some of them have been selected, so it's a very interesting opportunity for collaboration. So please look out for what is going on in Portugal as well. The city that will be selected will be the ambassador of Portugal in Europe. And the whole process is already very important, as you mentioned. Fernando, thank you so much for your comments. You provided invaluable inputs, and I apologize for not allowing you to go into the details of your comment, but this conference does not allow us to extend for much longer. This is the format, and indeed it has disadvantages, and also we had the scenes yesterday, so indeed we cannot let you speak for much longer. Thank you.
Vamos fazer mais uma pequena alteração ao programa.
We will have a short change to our program. We will have our coffee break now, and we will come back for the next panel.
até trazer cá. Já está, já.
Sim, e por isso vamos precisamente continuar com a inclusão por via da cultura, que nos traz a palco Marta Silva.
So we will continue with Marta Silva, Vanessa Cottrell, and Paulo Lameiro. Good morning. It's a privilege to be here side to side with these panelists. We decided to have a different sort of panel, a more discussion panel. I am Sérgio Marques. I work for a cultural association. We have several inclusion projects, especially focused on movies and cinema. We work with schools and now that's better. Thank you. I was saying our flagship project is in Cinema Insuflável, which is a mobile cinema that takes movies to different territories. So this panel will be an informal one. I will start with my dear colleagues to present their organizations, and then we will speak a little bit about each one's projects. In the end, we will have a moment for Q&A. If there are no questions, we can do a Madonna choreography, since we have a dancer and a musician here. Marta, you have the floor.
Hello, Sergio. Hello, everyone. I would like to thank the Centro Region DG Culture for holding this conference. It's so important to hold these events, and the panels have been very well balanced. Largo Residências is a non-for-profit charity based in Lisbon, although I come from the north, but I sold my soul to the south in the last 20 years, as my father said. It is a cooperative in Intendente in Lisbon. I don't know if you know, Intendente was for many decades a suburb, almost in the periphery, in the heart of Lisbon. but periphery because open to several marginalities, social fragilities, and it was considered a non-place that was seen as dangerous, where nobody wanted to live, work, and to stay. But in the last 10 years, it underwent significant urban transformation, very much stemming from a community plan led by the town hall of the municipality of Lisbon, a community process program that was begun precisely in Intendente neighborhood and Moraria. And it was not only composed of infrastructure construction, but also other projects, social projects. I often tell Antonio Costa, the current Prime Minister, that he was not the first to implement this change. We existed before, and other structures existed working on social cohesion. If it were possible to us to change our mission on the bylaws, I would reduce it to just one sentence. I would say that our mission is to contribute to social cohesion in that territory. And allow me to try to explain to you a bit better what we actually do, and that is we are enablers of activities of social cohesion and local development, and promotion of social economy. In other words, social businesses linked to other sectors but contribute to the financial and social sustainability of our own work, so our self-financing, but it also helps to create jobs locally in two areas. First, by helping to improve working conditions in a sector that was always very precarious. And since we intended to work mainly, but not exclusively, with all of the most fragile sectors and people of this territory, we looked at creating jobs for these people. So for 11 years, we were in Intendente. This has been a year of transformation, change, of implementing a paradigm shift, trying to make up for the poor urban planning of the territory. It has been a very fruitful endeavor, but there is still a lot more to do. We often welcome also artistic projects coming from without, but we also work with artists within, and we invite artists to work with us, and the mediation team, management team, guarantee the quality of human relationships that should exist to ensure that culture is a de facto social commitment that will foster the improvement of living conditions of the local populations. And this is why it was very fruitful in producing businesses, including hospitality. We had a hotel, a small boutique hotel of 22 rooms, half of which were offered for free to artists, and the rest were for paying guests. In other words, for the tourism sector with a positive footprint, and the tourists were the patrons of the project. So instead of only contributing to a non-for-profit organization, they were contributing for a profit-making organization sector. And we would also provide accommodation to local artists working, for example, in the local theatre. And then we also had a cafe open every day to the community. So it's a very important meeting point for workers in the cultural sector, neighbors, the public visitor of the cultural action, tourists, and anyone who previously thought that Intendent was negative now discovered a hush in a network. Our ongoing work is founded on a local cultural development networks. So what connects us is the territory, and we keep in touch through other organizations that share the same object, which is the territory and people. Therefore, education organizations, health, social welfare, and local government agents, all connected. So most of the projects, like the annual project, like Barro em Festa, which is produced by around 20 local organizations, and other more specific, other projects with more specific targets, like the project for the inclusion of refugees and immigrants, or other projects targeting more vulnerable population, the homeless, projects directed towards the people who always saw Intendente, who always regarded Intendente as their home. Most of the social support projects are organized into draws. There is the Center for the Homeless, the Center for Refugees, the Center for Sex Workers. So increasingly it compartmentalizes a society. But what we try to is leave that for later. Okay, very well. That's great. I'll do so.
In Portuguese?
The shock. I didn't read the small print in the email. I have to speak in Portuguese. First of all, apologies that I do not speak Portuguese. I would love to, but I will have to speak in English. Thank you for the organizers and for having me. This is a really inspiring conference, and I think it lets me and probably everyone travel a bit through regions in Portugal, but also outside. It was this morning also the insights that we gained on the municipalities were very interesting. So my name is Vanessa Cocho. To use your way of, you sold your soul to the south. I am from the south. My family is from Australia. I live in Brussels, so that's more the north. And I would love to sell my soul to the south. And I'm not a person of the north, but yeah, I grew up in Germany. Now I live in Brussels. I represent an organization called Unity. It's a European network based in Brussels, but we have members across Europe. And the people that we represent with this association are migrant entrepreneurs and migrant business owners. But the topics that we work on include, of course, business, economics, migration, inclusion. It stands for Migrant Integration Through Locally Designed Experiences. It's a mouthful. It basically refers to political participation and inclusion at the local level, involving migrants and refugees in decisions. Because we know that they are often the recipients of policies, but they're not very often the actors and sort of the participants of shaping these policies. We currently have other projects, one focusing on migrant women and enhancing the digital skills among migrant women, helping them find jobs in Europe by giving them the tools to find jobs in the digital sector. Another project that recently ended was maybe more linked to the cultural sector or the creative sector, which was on narratives, the way we talk about migration. is, of course, sometimes very loaded in Europe. There's debates that move to the very right, and we think that often when we talk about migration or migrants, it's either in numbers or it's in economic terms, but when we look more at the cultural aspects and how we communicate together and how we have a dialogue together and how we share, for example, positive narratives about inclusion and migration. So we highlighted this in this project through films. We had a diversity film festival where we highlighted films by migrant producers, migrant film directors. We had trainings for journalists. How do we talk about migration at the European level, at the local level? So our projects usually transcend through different levels, European, national, local, and we try and have a transnational element. We don't want to just, that's our advantage, I guess. We have a network of organizations in different countries. We can connect them. We can connect the local challenges, and we can see, our partner in Riga, in Latvia, they maybe have similar approaches to including migrants in their municipality as Vipoli is a municipality in Catalonia. So we can connect, but then of course we have to acknowledge the differences. Each municipality has a unique story, a journey, I think, also in terms of migration. And so we don't want to compare, but we use the benefits of this diverse network.
Okay, thank you.
Wasn't in Portuguese, but...
Paulo, queria te pedir então se podias apresentar a tua entidade.
Olá, bom dia. Obrigado pelo convite. É prazer estar aqui.
It is my pleasure to be here. I'm Paulo. I am artistic director of a association called Centro in Leiria with a philharmonic orchestra and a school, artistic schools like so many others in the country. But since last year we have been implementing participated arts and shows, opera in prison as we've called it. But from all of the palette of projects, let me highlight, in addition to Opera in Prison, two other projects. One project for babies to be born, and another one for people in terminal stage of life. And why are all these three projects linked? Well, because babies are human beings with the greatest adults that come with these babies. So at an age where we are experts in taking care of the other, be he or she, the moment in our life where there is genuine and real interest, the capacity to decodify the other and to reach out to the other, is when we have a baby in our hands. And what participated projects today must ask themselves is why I must go out and reach out to the other. So when we apply to participated art projects, often we forget the other. The majority of projects exist and are implemented because I don't identify the other, who I consider as part of me or as part of my community, but rather I found a project, a European project, that will fund me if I work with the other. It sounds like the same thing, but it is not. So all of our methodology that we use to work with the other must consider my right to transform the other, of impacting the other, the tools I use to impact the other. Who authorizes me to impact the other, even in prison, and I'll come back to that. But the anchor, another anchor project is another one that we have with people in terminal stage, because those people teach us what is worth learning. With babies, I learn to learn, but I don't learn what is essential and what is common to all of us. it entails a different awareness. So in these two projects, we develop different skills, and no professional goes into prisons or works with inmates or with gypsy communities or with mentally incapable people or disabled people without having worked previously with babies and terminally ill patients. And these three projects have these anchors, the other and understanding the other. Picking up on the concept of the other, this is very important. Paulo mentioned the other in anthropology, and the other is me, right? I am the other. Quite easily, I might be a terminally ill patient, or I might be a homeless person, or an inmate. So this empathy of being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes is part of the love or the love that takes us to develop these projects, or the rage that has us develop these projects. Now, Marta, please talk to us about the refuge home for refugees and immigrants. Who are exactly refugees? Please start with that. And there is something here that I would ask you to please focus on. Humanity, Europe, Portugal. We talk about illegal immigrant, the illegal refugee. We can associate a person to illegality. But a person in a space, this is strange. This is strange even in philosophical terms to say to someone you're illegal. A lion who eats a zebra is not illegal, but telling someone that he or she is illegal is a bit strange in my view. So, Marta, please explain to us this idea of refugees and immigrants. What is so nice of not having not having prepared these moments is to be able to, before answering your question of refuge homes, to speak about refuge homes. I will take this opportunity to pick up on the concept of the other, and I'll link it up to the human condition. And this has to do with what I told you about our organization, and I underscored employability, and now I add the role of mediation to this, and why it is so important when we work with people. And where we engage in working on a relationship and developing a relationship. In our cooperative, we are us. It's not me and the other, I and the other, but it is we. So we bring those people into our working team. So in my working team, I have people who were refugees, were considered criminals or prostitutes. So they are people who are part of our team, and because they experienced these situations in the first person, they know exactly what are the behavioral and social issues that I experience, and will help us to develop processes and activities, and not because we have a call. And 11 years ago, when we applied for the first time, we were told that we were local, and we were not part of the keywords. In our keywords, we did not have participative work. And we are missing all of the other keywords that were the targets and the indicators at the time. But fortunately, we said, no, we will not change our essence because we are working with this neighborhood that needs to be internationalized because it's part of our genes. We have more than 100 nationalities that live in our neighborhood. So on our side, the people who design and implement are those people who experience these situations or even are often still in that situation. And so it's not the refugee, it's not the homeless. It is the person in a condition of refuge, in a condition of not having a home. Because that person can be me or you tomorrow, but that person cannot have his or her identity restrained by that temporary condition. It is a moment of existence which for many years our societies focused too much on. A year ago, we had a wave of refugees from Afghanistan. This year, we have a wave of refugees from Ukraine. But our organization, which in the last 2 years has been working on this project called Refuge Homes, and we work with people who come from everywhere in the world, mostly from Africa, Northern Africa, Central Africa. And what they described in terms of constraints to access to the status of a refugee is extremely penalizing. They have been living for 2 or 3 years in Portugal, and they are not even considered refugees yet. And yet they see these people from Ukraine coming here with the status already as refugees. Abu Bakr, who is a person of our team, who said, I stepped into a boat. I crossed the Mediterranean. Fortunately, I wasn't one of the persons who died on my way here, but I don't have blue eyes, I don't have white skin, and unfortunately, I'm still not considered an immigrant. And yesterday we talked about Ukrainian artists and a program for them, but we have had African artists amongst us for decades, and there has been no program. So how do we organize our cultural policies? For example, if you want to address this concept of refuge, of a person in a refuge status. Let me give you an example. We are carrying out an activity which is the continuation of what we began with the people from Afghanistan last year. We now have a show, a concert with local Portuguese musicians, with highly qualified Afghan musicians, because they came from an orchestra in Afghanistan, which we have all heard about, but other people from other parts of Afghanistan who didn't even know each other. And all of a sudden, to ensure the sustainability of this project, I'm trying to sell these concerts in cultural facilities. I cannot sell this program for a show in 1 year's time, because they don't know where they will be next year. So how can we prepare such programs for an audience which is very volatile and subject to very high level of social instability compared to the traditional regular artists, so to speak? What is the refuge home? It is a community mediation and social inclusion program for people in refugee situation. And at first it was intended to bring into the team people who are in this situation, to help them to learn about the legal dimensions and also find out about all of the resources in the territory. If, for example, looking for a home, on which door they should knock, or if they're looking for a school, on which door to knock. So to help them familiarize with these legal, social, educational requirements, and also to help them because they were in need of a friendly hand, and not only a translator, but somebody who is familiar with the language, with behavior, with cultural tools. For example, somebody from Syria comes, somebody must tell him that if you hit your wife or your child, you can go to prison. These are small details that are not a mere translation of a sentence, or it is not merely telling them what you have to do here to get your papers. So above all, we had to prepare these mediators. So in addition to deliver this mediation work, we worked together with artists who wanted to work with these people, to get to know these people better and find out what they could do for income. Thus, we developed another project, Art and Crafts in Refuge. It might be with somebody who has been living several years in Lisbon, and a project in visual arts, for example, promotes the development of arts and crafts by these people who, most of them, are find themselves in vulnerable economic situations. Additionally, we try to document these people's opinions on public opinions. And I had a present here for you, but I'm going to give her the present. And why is that? Well, because over the months, during the months that we carried out the project, we held discussions not only with the different partners of the project, like the Aga Khan Foundation, that works very closely with the inclusion of immigrants, but also the beneficiaries of the project. We brought them into circular discussions and conversations to have them talk about all of the challenges in the inclusion process. And instead of only recording these conversations, we asked artists to come, sketchnote artists to come to put on paper everything they heard people say about what inclusion policies should be. And these are some of the drawings. Well, it's in Portuguese, I apologize. Some are in English.
Things are in English, some are in Portuguese, but then I will send you to the translation and I will give you an online version. Sim. Depois quem quiser pode tirar cada um. Isto foi, por exemplo, o ano passado, porque tínhamos
We did this last year because we had an Afghan mediator in our team. We had an Afghan member in our team, and it was very easy to include people from Afghanistan, who were just arriving, to include them in our activities. We were 2 weeks away from a festival, and it was very easy to bring them into our team. One of the ladies, for example, took charge of the kitchen. Another person became part of the production team. Others held dancing shows. And we had an afternoon of free drawing, and we had adults and children drawing what they felt only days after arriving in our country. And we have compiled all of this. This is exactly expresses their feelings. This is for you. This is for you. And I don't have anything for you. Just joking. Let me remind you that we are here representing civil society to some extent. These are associations. Sometimes we receive funding for projects, other times we don't, sometimes we fail. And there are many stories of projects in the draws. And I was thinking about, I'm saying this because I was thinking about what Marta has just said, and this often happens to us. We go with a project, and then when we want to implement the project, it no longer makes as much sense as what we thought it made when we were drawing it up or putting it on paper. And we need to be super creative and adapt these projects. For example, I have a Gulbenkian project for the implementation of a play in Campagna with young people. And when we started implementing, we realized that around 50 gypsy children were more interested in creating a cinema film club. And we had to adapt our project because we cannot we cannot fit the reality into our project, but rather the other way around. We need to adapt to reality. Vanessa. Your project, in my view, has a particularity. It is implemented in 6 different cities, and it has a local design context. This means that it has a base and then adapts itself to each city's particularities. Please explain to us how this works.
Who's doing an amazing job and even managing to follow the debates between audience and speakers. So thank you for that. Yes, sure, I can elaborate on that. It's, indeed, I would say it's almost an experiment because we are not starting from scratch. We're not starting from zero. There are existing projects that have worked on this topic, and there is even a lot of research on how migrants or refugees, as wide as you want to define this term, some municipalities prefer to say newcomers, but then we might be excluding those that have been in a country for 20 years, but still might not be proficient in that language and still have barriers to participation. So we need to be quite clear and at the same time very inclusive of what we talk about. I say experiment because the way we work, indeed, we have 6 countries that we involve in our project. Spain, Greece, Latvia, the UK, Belgium and the Netherlands. And 2 cities in this consortium are more experienced. They already have designs on how to include migrants and refugees in the municipality. So not only a consultation where they say, what's your opinion, thank you, goodbye. It's a regular exchange and dialogue where they have influence on the policies, they can name priorities, they can say, our priority, for example, is housing. So that's something we need to solve first. Or jobs is often named as one of the highest priority. We want to work. We don't want to be passive citizens. We want to be active citizens in this municipality. Language is also a big barrier, of course. I mean, I'm noticing that now. If I didn't have an interpreter, I would not understand anything. So imagine being in a city where you don't know how the system works, you don't know how you can voice your opinion, you don't know how you can gather as a collective. Maybe sometimes there are barriers on how to form an association. There are certain barriers in different European countries that prevents them from forming associations. So the teams that we have in these municipalities, it's like a triangle, basically. You have a municipality, a local government, you have a migrant-led organization, so someone that can represent the voice of the migrants and refugees in that municipality. And then the third partner are research partners that are trying to help bridge, mapping this picture and trying to understand the evolution of the policies over time, how have certain events maybe shaped municipalities' approach to diversity and participation and inclusion. There are certainly external events, political events that you can't control and that shape policies and sway them in one direction. And then we connect all of these local teams, and after a first phase where it's about it's actually more about listening. It's not about, I think yesterday someone said in a panel, I can't remember, I think it was towards the end, we need to talk more to local communities. And Mile is also about we need to listen to local communities and not assume that we know what a certain person, whether they're a migrant or someone that has been living in a country for a long time, what they need. If we assume we know what they need, then usually it's going to be the wrong thing. So Mile is about asking the questions that need to be asked in terms of, what do you need to feel a sense of belonging to this city? What do you need, how do you see yourself participating? And then we will find out what migrants would like. And it can vary a lot between the different municipalities in terms of priorities. Yeah.
And can you please explain us the time of your project? It's 2 years?
It's a 2-year project. It's quite a new project. We started earlier this year in January. It's funded by the Asylum, Migration and Integration Fund, of the AMIF fund of the EU. Yep. A lot of our projects are funded through the AMIF fund. And as you were also talking about projects and the dependency on funding, it also guides, of course, our priorities. So right now the priority of the European Union is in terms of inclusion in their sort of action plan. It is a lot about housing, access to health, healthcare, education, employment. So culture is not, culture, like someone said this morning, it's more like the cement. So we try and bring in the culture element in our projects, but it's not a priority. And when we talk to municipalities and the migrant-led organizations and we hear back from them, we had focus groups recently where we asked migrants different questions. It was about feeling belonging. What makes you feel a sense of belonging? What do you want from the municipality? And the aspects that they mentioned most, the priorities are housing, language barriers. A lot of them are not even aware of, for example, the facilities that they have, even to file a complaint in a municipality. They don't know, or they didn't realize that they have certain powers, even though they can't vote yet. So it's a 2-year project, but the idea is to make it sustainable. So at the end of the 2 years, next year in December, the goal is to create networks and to expand these networks for migrant-led organizations in Europe, but also networks for local governments that wish to work on diversity and inclusion policies. So the idea is to expand this network and make it sustainable. How we do that, we don't know yet. It depends on funding, but also there's other ways to make, I think, networks like this sustainable. It depends also on the actors and what they want.
Desculpa quebrar aqui as regras do jogo. Because I always think about too much on the how can we keep working without funding. One thing that I was starting to approach when I started Residências Refúgio, but we couldn't get it yet, but I would not quit. It's if we train these mediators and these people that know the system, that can contribute to the system, how to convince the municipalities, local parishes, government, to bring these people on the table, on the office, to hide them as the people that need to draw and implement their municipal intercultural program that all the municipality have. So we were trying to convince, look, we are preparing them, it will be very good if you, because they were partners from the project, you can then hide these people. This is, for example, or to organize these migrants like they are prestadores de independent workers, and they can sell their service to these governmental institutions to tell them, because these people, and I can tell you by hearing them, they say, we are tired of being asked to tell our opinion for free.
Agora vais dizer isso tudo em 30 segundos em português.
Caramba, sorry. Troquei-me.
Disseste para a Vanessa, agora tens de dizer para nós todos.
Sorry, desculpem. Qual é que é a questão? Tentamos muito que este processo de formação de mediadores trouxesse uma componente de sustentabilidade ao projeto, que era convencer, por exemplo...
The lady is now repeating exactly what she told you in English, as she was asked by the moderator. Exactly the same thing.
porque estas populações dizem e fartam-se dizer que estão cansadas de ser chamadas para focus groups, para debates, para conferências, para de pessoas que estão a desenhar projetos, a dar-lhes o conhecimento sobre a matéria que vão trabalhar e nunca lhes serem visto isto como um trabalho. E é uma mensagem que eu me sinto na obrigação de passar.
Oh, Paulo, queria-te que me explicasses, e eu estou mesmo muito curioso.
Paulo, and I'm very curious. Talk to us about opera in prisons and the Mozart Pavilion. And that is in prisons, isn't it? Please tell us. Tell us more about the project, and please tell us what is exactly a person in reclusion. What does it mean? Very well. Lydia has 2 prisons. A regional prison, as all district capitals, and a national prison for young people between the age of 16 and 23 with heavy sentences. Some time ago, we had a show for with people with chronic mental disease. And somebody told me, Paul, you should do this in prison. At the time, I didn't see the connection. But when he took me to a prison, and he said, this is Maestro Paulo Lameira, who is an opera singer, an opera singer, and he is here to teach you to sing. And Arnaldo, in the audience, in the first line, he said a swear word, which I will not repeat, and everything but opera, please. But the energy he said opera, the word opera with, I don't know if you know, 99.9% of people don't know what opera is and have never gone to an opera. And I'm going to test this, but 99% of the people don't know what opera is. But the energy with which he said opera was incredible. And I said, yes, exactly, this is it. But not only because of this. Opera is what Wagner called a work of art, total, complete work of art. So we have theater, music, dance, scenography, architecture, everything. And Arnaldo gave me a hint. This is the topic you should work on. Arnaldo today parks cars, and he sings Puccini when he is parking the cars in Leiria. This is exactly what is happening with Arnaldo today, and close parenthesis. But what is opera in prisons? In 1981, I had my first show with Sampa, and since 91 to 2003, because of Arnaldo, opera was born. And until 2014, it was all carried out in a voluntary basis. And as an opera singer, I brought my friends from São Carlos Opera to sing with me in prisons. Opera in prisons is a project based on 3-year cycles. And in the beginning, we only worked on Mozart's works of art. Not because Mozart is a champion, but there is a connection between prisons and Mozart. But when I showed Don Giovanni by Peter Sellers to them, that begins with an homicide. And the version is not even in Seville in the 17th century, but it's in Bronx. And the lead players are two African actors. So imagine, most of our inmates in Portugal are Africans, right? We're not going to go into that debate, but can you imagine 40 inmates watching these two actors with a brutal voice, an incredible voice, crying out strange cries with a incredible voice, and they were earning as much as Cristiano Ronaldo. And when we told them, you can't even imagine. So that was the teaser, and the teaser was a success. The 3 first years, and I'm going to go into discipline. Okay, Fernando, I'm disciplined. In the first 3 years, what we did in the first year was to be together, learn to be together with the other. So the other taught me that I am not alone. The other is we, and that's an important step. In the second year of the project, we create and perform together. We learn to sing an opera and we go onto stage. And this is not playground. It is very serious. And in the third year, after this experience, with the inmate who doesn't know how to read and doesn't have a home or a family, he will sing with the Gulbenkian Orchestra in the Grand Auditorium. And his mother or grandfather didn't even know he was in prison. He had the courage of telling them that he was in a prison because he wanted them to watch him sing Mozart. And we work 50% inside prison and 50% of the time outside of prison with the mothers, the brothers, the families, and then we bring them as well onto stage. And this is so very important to transfer to life this experience. And 3 notes of this experience on this note. The biggest challenge is that nothing is resolved in prison. And who needs changes, transformation the most are not the inmates. And note the relapse rate is very high. And we were asked, please help us reduce that relapse rate of these people. And we discovered that the problem is not in them. This happens not because of them. It's because of the community, the technicians, the prisons, the lawyers, the magistrates, the prison officers, the journalists, the local governments, because all of them. And this is why our project, Opera in Prison, when we evaluate the impact, it is not the impact on the inmate and their families, but rather the impact on all of us. And let me give you an example. One of the main musicians of the Gulbenkian Orchestra told me in the end, many years ago, for many years, in a concert, I had not used all of the muscles of my heart, full stop. That was the impact of this show on a professional of the project, who would normally be excluded from the evaluation of the project. And then we decided because prisons are divided into different pavilions, and we decided to physically build a space where only art is performed. Nothing else takes place there. And it's very important to not have anything else there. Because sometimes we have our shows in places where they do other things. So we created a place dedicated to creation. And it is another theatre in Leiria. So Leiria goes every 3 months to theatre to watch shows put on stage by these people. And we switched from Mozart operas to contemporary works. And today we have a European project called Traction, and it carries out research to measure and value scales of co-creation, social impact, and the use of technology in co-creation. Today, we develop 3 technological tools with 9 European partners who do what? Well, the first partner was the Barcelona Opera. And they came to Leiria. Can you imagine that? To a small town, Leiria. And the director, Don Giovanni, let me tell you, Don Giovanni was put on show, and I'll sit down, sorry, I want to be disciplined, says the gentleman. The director of the prison played the part of commendator. But to conclude, I should say that we had a dream in Portugal. We wanted to invent a technological tool for inmates who could not go to Gulbenkian to watch a show, or who could not show their shows to their families in Romania, for example, to be able to put on a stage in Leiria, singers from Barcelona, singers, a voice from Angola, on stage to sing with inmates who could not leave their prisons using augmented reality. It was jaw-opening. This technological dimension is very important. Is this a dream? No, no, no. We have many problems. It's not all good news. Let me tell you just 3 of the problems. First, my naive dream, you will sign employment contracts. 9 years later, I had 100 companies in our country saying, I want to give jobs to these people. But does any mother want his child, her child, to have a job because he or she was an inmate? Do you think that anybody leaves prison fascinated by a job that is being shown to him because he sang opera in prison? First mistake. First mistake. I could not advertise this. We had to approach this in a different way. The partners and modus operandi has to be different. Secondly, we need to measure the impact of all of this. And the tools validated to measure the impact are very complex, above all because they are only measuring the impact on the other. I am very sapient, full of my goodwill and all of my research, and I arrive there and I discover that the evaluation does not evaluate me, the musician, the prison guard, the photographer of social media, because all of these people play a very important part in all of this. Finally, it is very hard, very complex to work in prisons. Contrary to what one may think, there is no time. There is no time. We don't have time to work with inmates. We have inmates between 9 and 10 a.m. and 2 and 4:20 p.m. 5 days a week, which is not much, too little. So this is a big challenge, and we have been thinking a lot about the ethics of intervention, the rights and the know-how and the expertise that we are trying to correct, to refinance finances, because they are the ones who are investing in the world's lacaixas. The 600 million are earned with the help of these inmates, their families, and these problems that we are living with. The others, not us. Thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. Allow me to just summarize what you said. So from 2013 to 2014, only voluntary. No, from 81 to 2003, only voluntary work. And from 2003 to 2014, opera, but still volunteer. And only from 2014 onwards did we receive this first support. And you also mentioned sacred space for creation. I took note of that. Very well. We have 5 minutes for democratic processes. You are about 30, 5 minutes divided by 30. Ladies first, yes, of course. Good evening, said the lady. No, it's good morning, good morning. Of course it is. I'm an anthropologist, and I love the other, although I know exactly that I always see things from my eyes, from me. But of all that we heard here, what is most interesting is that sometimes we forget that communities, people who are around us, play a very important role. And we don't discover that role through surveys only. When Marta said that immigrants or refugees, people in refuge status, felt hurt, to say the least. This means that the local community, every time they see that certain processes are happening to other people coming from outside, feel exactly the same. And that is not always considered. We say they are selfish, they are this and that, and I'm not going to even use the right words that are going through my mind. But we forget that although we criticize, we are the ones who are in this dual situation. Everything happens because of the other. I am tall or short because the other person is tall or short, and we forget to have a call card, or the fact that we have a call card saying inmate or ex-inmate is actually dangerous. It's not a call card. And we look at them from our standpoint, and none of us are capable of putting ourselves in other people's shoes, or hardly ever. And I think that none of this is being taken into account by most associations. Sometimes there are associations who say, let's put the community in touch, let's carry out proximity actions, but it's not exactly this. I love anthropology because it says, let's imagine that we are one in the sense. All of our experiences, the experience of all of us together, are what create a real experience, a true experience. So I can be Marta, and Marta can be Paul, and Paul can be me, in the true sense of being the other. We should imagine if we were born as the other, would we be able to do things better or differently? And sometimes it looks like we are leaving communities. And I apologize, the microphone is failing. We forget these people, and then these people who came from Ukraine and get their papers in just a few months. And what about me, who was born here, who have always worked here, who grew up here? We often forget that we are imposing on the other certain things which should be, we should be gentler when imposing ourselves on the other. And I think that this is something that we always, not always, we don't always take this into consideration. I have extraordinary people before me, and now I dare you to think about these things and perhaps develop a project like this, thinking about the other, the person who bears such a big load on their shoulders. Very quickly. Let me try to respond to that. There are studies and theories about this. When you're in a fight, you are in all fights. There is no LGBT struggle or strife without labor rights strives. All fights are cut across each other. So when Marta talks about the struggle of Afghan refugees, mentioned that they must tell the men that they cannot hit women or children. So these struggles are always cut across different levels of society. And I try to put this in all projects, and I see this also in Martha's projects. A project is an idea, but the reality is when it is implemented and when the community is in the project and is part of the project. And now I will give the floor to that gentleman. No, before that, allow me to just say that it is not from our perspective. We are here a privileged audience. I was just trying to suggest that we put ourselves in the shoes of these people who feel they are different. And I'm not even telling them, saying here that they are right. I'm just saying that this is how it is. I would like to begin by congratulating you for your projects, very inspiring projects. And I think what we are missing are more projects like these. And that we should take these projects to all places. What we need to do is to take these projects that are successful projects that had good results to other places without applications, without these are fabulous projects. I have a concrete question for Paul. Do you have any solution for your questions? In the dissemination of the project, I think there is already a documentary, but if there isn't, perhaps we could think about a documentary. I always recall Cesar from the Italian films. And now a concrete question to people, to you who work with people in difficulties. When people become independent, they want to have their own home in Portugal. And normally it is not an easy task. So they need often say guarantor or sponsor, and it's not that easy to find sponsors in Portugal. Well, my questions are very objective and very easy to answer. Opera in prison, the project does not end when the 3-year sponsor's budget ends. The project of each of the editions close when the last inmate of the project gets out of prison. And when that happens, the whole team of the project goes out for a drink with the inmate, with the ex-inmate. And we always try to take him home. Note that there is research that shows that parole, limited parole during the weekends should never occur on Fridays, because if the inmate has parole on a Friday, it is most likely that he will not come back on Monday. The fact is that they should leave the prison on Monday. My phone also, you know that phones are forbidden in prisons, right? But I am able to call all of the inmates and speak to them using my phone. And you know that mothers speak to their children in the prisons. And it is essential to be able to speak to them. That person must know that if he has a question, any hesitation, he has a permanent group of people with whom he worked with for 3 years, that they can call. And sometimes they are no longer in Portugal, they are in Brazil or Romania or Luxembourg, and we still talk to them. And we still keep track of them. This is not an easy project, but it is an extraordinary project. We work with the community at the same time as we work with inmates. We have dramatic deaths. Let me tell you a story. One of the heroes of our project, his name was Jackson. Jackson was the leader, the first leader that prison guards chose. This is off. This is off. It's not being recorded. It's not being streamed. Jackson was a prison leader, and he was chosen to take part in the project, and in good time, because he became a leader of the project. And Jackson was the first to write the rap song played by the Gulbenkian Orchestra. In prisons, we speak Creole, and we had to learn Creole, otherwise we are not with them. I was not born here. I am not going to die here. One day the doors will open and I will go out. The Negro first must think, and then afterwards will do. Don't lose hope that freedom will arrive. This is a translation of the rap song. Jackson had been sentenced to 15 years of prison, and he never had parole because he had nobody to sponsor him, to sign for the parole, to sponsor him for the parole. And when he left prison, do you know where he went for the first time? To São Carlos Theatre, straight away. And my friend called me and said, I have here a guy who said that he came from opera in prison as his job, and he's looking for a job. He was Jackson, obviously. He could not be a singer, but he applied to become an extra and to become a model. But unfortunately, he was shot dead a few weeks later. But the fact is, we are all like Jackson. We are all part of the same community. As for the question on housing, well, before I come to the issue of house, before that, community. Community is a living organism. It changes every day. What we had yesterday is part of what we have today. And until we started having real estate speculation, a Chinese citizen in the neighborhood said, now we have the Finnish people buying our homes and the prices are spiking. But the fact is, the beneficiaries and the are always changing, and this is a flow. And I often tell government officials, don't dare to do anything there without involving the community. They have a strong sense of civic mobilization. For example, Portugalia wanted to build a tower there, and they immediately had a movement, a civic movement against. And these are neighbors. We're not talking about associations. They join hands. And some of their associations stem out of these citizens, from citizens joining hands. And sometimes these entities only later apply to projects, but there is a lot of bottom-up there. A reality that results from needs, that citizens who organize themselves into formal manifestations, and I don't just show up and say, I'm an association. On my own, I'm an association, and I don't even have members, I don't represent anyone. This is what we have seen, especially in the last 10 years, a very strong, difficult 10 years. We had the Troika, and all of a sudden we had, again, the pandemic, and now this brings me to housing. It is a problem. That is a problem of these people, but it's also mine, for example. I don't know where I will be living in March, from March onwards. My rent has hiked. I won't tell you how many times, and I will now have to look for another home. But it's even a bigger problem for people who are in a situation of vulnerability. Social equity is part of our constitution, but we are still far from fully implementing it. In our particular specific case, we had a accommodation unit that I told you that granted rooms not only to artists but also to people who all of a sudden were homeless. But we lost it during COVID because we were unable to pay the rent. But now we are fortunately trying to do works on an old building that belongs to the government, and hopefully in a few years' time we will be able to show governments that currently to have empty buildings is a national crime. And by doing this, we will be able to resume the accommodation for people in refuge situation. The free market, as we have understood, does not resolve what is provided for in our constitution. It does not. But another thing is to try to convince people, municipal policymakers, that policy is not only housing. It's much more than that. And now I put on my cooperative hat as defender of cooperative action. We need to resume, for example, housing cooperative movement, which in different financial conditions can come together to develop solutions for needs. A cooperative on his own that has 500 million euros, for example, can join hands with an inmate that only has 50 euros in his pocket, but can develop a cooperative project. And that might provide a solution to those situations where, for example, I cannot have a home with accessible rent because my salary is slightly higher than the brackets that are provided for equitable rent housing, or I am not applicable to free housing because I do have income. And I end here. Thank you very much to all three speakers. And thank you so much for inviting me. I was honored to be to coordinate, to moderate this panel. And now I'm going to sing Madonna's song for 15 minutes. No, fake news, sorry. No, stop everything. No, please. Well, before that, I think it's marvelous that a debate on culture ends with a discussion on housing. It is a good sign. But I don't know how to sing. No. We all must sing. We will all sing. I will not leave this room if we don't all sing. We have to sing. And the next panel that we'll have immediately, keynote speaker, the contribution of culture to health and well-being by
Hello, everyone. I'm aware that you are saying good morning. It's already good afternoon in Romania. I think it's a difficult task for me to come after such a lively debate. But on the other hand, I think the task that I have comes naturally after the conversation that you just had. Because I was asked, and I'm grateful for this invitation, to speak about the contribution of culture to health and well-being. I will briefly tell you the contents of my presentation today. After a short introduction about my background and the organization that I work for, I will briefly present you some of the results of recent research that I've been doing together with a wider team in the framework of the Culture for Health project. I will like to connect some societal challenges with evidence that we and other researchers found, and also exemplify with some of the initiatives that my organization has been doing in the past years, and then raise some points for discussion. Hopefully there will be time also to have some questions or contributions from your side. I'm aware the time is not necessarily to our advantage. So, to begin, I'm a program director of the Cluj Cultural Center. Cluj Cultural Center is an NGO based in Romania, in Transylvania. It is the legacy organization of the process that involved the entire city of Cluj in preparing its bid for the European Capital of Culture title. As probably some of you may know, we did not win that title, but there was a local commitment to continue to work on that program. And this is what my organization is doing, consists of 116 member organizations, which are the cultural, public and private organizations in the city, local universities, the local administration, and the regional administration. And our mission is actually to support the presence of culture as sustainable development, first of all in our cities, but also internationally through different approaches. And one of the areas that we started to work on, the focus areas, is culture and well-being. And this topic has a certain history with our organization because it was part of our big book in 2016. It was called then Art and Happiness, and it was about resignifying emotional and mental well-being. Then we rebranded it as under the title Inner Space, because we thought that is a nice metaphor for the need to redefine somehow the health of our outer spaces, but also of our inner spaces. And throughout these years, we had been partnering with a lot of other institutions and organizations, like the World Health Organization, Culture Action Europe, Trans-Europal, different universities in Europe, in different projects that mainly have been funded by the European Union. And you have there on the screen just the logos of some of these projects. Art and Wellbeing was supported by Creative Europe. Measuring the Social Dimension of Culture is a Horizon project. Horizon 2020. Culture for Health is a project that I'm going to make reference more into this presentation, and more. Maybe to start with, I've been working in the cultural sectors now for 25 years. And in the past 15 years at least, I had a particular interest in this paradigm of culture as for sustainable development. And in 2016, actually, when I was actually working for the bid for the European Capital of Culture title, my father died. And in that moment, one of my coping with that pain was to listen to one of the songs, and I would make a reference to pop culture. Peter Gabriel has a song called "I Grieve," and I was listening to that song over and over. And then after a few days, a colleague of mine sent me an article, which was an interview that Alain de Botton was doing with Peter Gabriel. And actually there, Peter Gabriel was explaining how he particularly wrote that song to help people cope with mourning situations, different type of mourning situations in their life. And in that moment, it was a fascinating discovery for me to understand that something that it was there, isn't it? Culture always had, art always had that ability to put us in touch with our emotions, to give us energy, to help us cope with difficulties. Somehow, I realized that we take it for granted, and it is not as such being spoken, programmed, and probably there is enough space in our society, given the major challenges that we are facing for that. Now, as you all know what health and well-being is, I mean, every one of us has an idea of what health and well-being is. When trying to work with this systematically, of course, one of the first challenges that we encounter is that everyone has their own definition of well-being. And for instance, for my organization in the beginning, our interest was mainly in psychological well-being. So how we can improve relations, emotions, cognition through our relationship with art. Then diving deeper into the subject, I found out much more about all these other dimensions. And you may know that, for instance, in 2019, the World Health Organization has published an important, for this field, a milestone research, a scoping review on how arts contributes to health and well-being. And as such, I will not necessarily read those definitions, just for you to see like how WHO defines health, that is a state that is beyond mere absence of disease. It involves a certain capacity of people to also enjoy their lives. And also OECD also add to this idea of individuals' goals and context in which the individual can thrive and feel satisfied. So mostly when we talk about well-being in our work, we look at this positive condition of existence, which is characterized by health and satisfaction, in which individuals and communities feel that their needs are being met and that they have the necessary resources to pursue their own definition of happiness and achieve their own definition of success. Now, from that perspective, I will now move to some of the findings of our Culture for Health project. Culture for Health is a project, 18-month project. It's actually a preparatory action that was initiated by the European Parliament and the European Commission to, first of all, to put together and synthesize existing evidence on the impact of culture on health and well-being, to identify the most relevant policy avenues in supporting this field, and also support some piloting activities to help illustrate how this field works. The project is actually led by Culture Action Europe, and it is a wider consortium, and Cluj Cultural Center, the organization that I represent, is one of the members of this consortium. I was part of the research team leading this new scoping review on trying to understand, to synthesize and analyze the existing evidence on the impact of culture and arts on health and well-being. And for this research, we have tried, since the WHO report in 2019 mainly looked at health and aspects like social inclusion as being defined as social determinants of health. In our report, we defined three broad categories to analyze and understand health, the relation of culture with health, the relation of culture with individual well-being and community well-being, which is just a different way of looking at the same aspects. But for us, it was important to look and to frame the notion of well-being also outside health. But I will begin with health. And I was mentioning here the WHO report is a key reference from this perspective. Our report, our research has confirmed the conclusions of the WHO report. But just to begin with some of the challenges of this area that could be actually addressed if culture is being supported to perform a particular role. First of all, that in all of our countries, and you could see on the screen that we have less than 3% as an average expenditure on preventive care in EU countries. So what does it mean? It means that mainly when we are conceptualizing our health services in all of our countries, we think of treating and managing already existing disease, but we invest very, very little in preventing such disease or promoting desirable and healthy lifestyles. And this is obviously after the COVID crisis becomes more evident in our society. And I think, and it's not that I think we all see there is a growing pressure now to orient more attention, policies, and resources to preventive care. Again, another challenge, a huge challenge we have globally is this the aging of the population, and one one day, just data that I found is that actually in the next 80 years, the old age dependency ratio is going to more than double. What does it mean? It means how many of the active, it is the proportion between the active people that contribute to the health budgets and social security budgets, and the old people that live on that support. And obviously rising mental health problems. Again, the numbers are very alarming, especially after the COVID, but the numbers that you can see on the screen are numbers from 2015, so way before the pandemic took place. And actually, depression is the largest contributor to disability in the world, and the second in Europe. And there is a rapid increase of mental health issues. So mainly what we found out, there is enough evidence. There's really a vast and robust base form showing how culture and art support prevention and promotion, and also management and treatment of disease. And I will just quote from these few of our findings that are backed by really robust research. That health promotion is being supported by culture, quite often through drama-related activities or theater video work. There is an improved health-related quality of life for patients living with different kinds of disease, especially people living on long-term with disease. Then there is strong evidence that participation in specific types of art intervention supports further cognitive decline in people that already have such impairments like dementia. That singing has a lot of positive effects for people that have respiratory problems, that also singing interventions in postpartum context support also the health of mothers and infants, but also their bonding. There is also an important contribution to facilitate pain reduction and management, which can, and also that involvement with music and drawing can alleviate anxiety in children undergoing different medical interventions. So you could imagine how much the health system could benefit if just small improvements or upgrades based on these findings would be implemented in our medical facilities. To give an example of our work in this field, we are currently running a pilot project together with the WHO, a singing intervention program for maternal mental health. It is 10-week intervention consisting of a weekly 1-hour singing session singing group, actually, for mothers with very small babies, mothers that are facing postpartum depression. And what we are actually trying to understand, to research through this project is how this could be scaled up, because there is actually quite robust evidence already on the benefits that such interventions are bringing to mothers, that also gain tools to engage with their children, get a better mood, get a support group. And so what is important for us is to see and understand how this could be scaled up in Romania, and for WHO, how it could be scaled up in different other contexts. Now, the second area that I was mentioning is individual well-being. And again, here I just picked one one way of illustrating the type of challenges that we are facing. Michael Lee in 2013 has created this graph showing how different innovations, like breakthrough innovations, have been appearing throughout human history. And you can see there's so much being clustered in the past years. But more importantly, he says that in the next 200 years, there will be more than 150 breakthrough innovations at with the same importance as the airplane or the steam engine that would appear in our society, and we are all aware of the type of transformations that they bring and the needs for that, and how this changes, how this very accelerated transformations changes or puts a lot of pressure on our individual and community mechanisms of coping, living, adapting. So some of the challenges that I mentioned, but I think you already mentioned a lot of them in your conversation so far. People face a lot of increased stress and anxiety, loss of life meaning, increase in suicide rates, with actually it seems to be higher with societies getting economically more developed. And also lack of emotional education and life skill education in any formal training system in most of the countries. So from our research, this would be the categories of subjective well-being that we have found a lot of evidence that arts have positive impact. I would just focus on some of those that are backed by really strong evidence that there's an improved sense of belonging for adults and older individuals, that participation in cultural and creative activities help people cultivate creative skills that support their personal and professional development, which means, of course, more chances to either pursue education or pursue desired career paths. Life satisfaction, reduced anxiety and depression levels, improved mood and emotional regulation. And I think this is a really important finding related to emotional regulation, meaning that people are become more able to deal with their negative emotions or even with their overexcitement once they participate in cultural and creative activities. There's increased confidence, self-confidence, self-valuing. And then there you see in the lower side of the screen, there are some associations that we have found on specific type of interventions. For instance, watching visual arts helps in stress reduction. Sketching helps people with flow, accessing flow states. Community singing reduces feeling the loneliness among older adults. Music supports resilience development in adults. Reading supports development of empathy among students and adults, and also meaning finding. One of our projects, again, a pilot project in this sense, happening again in Cluj, was an intervention for people experiencing burnout. The burnout, according to Mental Health America, 75% of the workforce has experienced burnout in their work life. And actually during the pandemic, this has increased dramatically. During and I presume after the pandemic, the burnout rate continues to be at high levels. So we created a pilot intervention and worked with people with severe burnout symptoms over 7 weeks. And the results of our research were that for all the participants, the burnout rates, the scores that on the scale that we use to measure the burnout, have decreased from high to medium or even low scores, and their well-being scores have increased significantly. And there's no time for me to go into more details on this. The third dimension that I was referring to is that of community well-being, and again on the screen there are just few of the dimensions and the challenges related to these dimensions. The urgency of social inclusion, having to face poverty, isolation, a lot of refugees that have to deal with forced displacement, the large number of people living with disability. There is an important and relevant way in which culture can support well-being in the school or work environment, either supporting learning needs or dealing with very specific age-related challenges in school, for instance, like bullying or other risk behaviors. Or in the case of work, dealing with burnout, but also with the development of new skills and the capacity to actually become more of an encyclopedical being, as it seems important in our society nowadays. Then there is this dimension of the quality of public spaces and how they influence our mental health, and how if we are starting to prioritize new principles of public space design, we can also support the well-being and health of our communities. There is also aspects related to active citizenship and how a city or a territory can enhance their identity through their cultural life and cultural profile. And obviously this dimension of how we relate to as communities, as society with crisis. And of course the most visible and impactful recent ones are the COVID-19 and the recent war in Ukraine. Just as a short notice, in the Culture for Health project, in partnership with the World Health Organization, has just published a short pamphlet report on how can arts support the mental health of people that are forcibly displaced. You can find this on the WHO page or on the Cluj Cultural Center social media. Okay, some of the strong evidence from that perspective is that arts and culture contribute to inclusion of disadvantaged groups, increase resilience, that active cultural participation supports increased social inclusion and bonding, that art and environmental design in mental health institutions, so in mental health settings, supports the well-being of patients and staff, and also of their carers, which is an important subject when we speak about health, is also how arts and cultural participation supports the well-being of carers and lowers the burden. When it comes to active cultural participation of all people, there's increased social engagement, decreased anxiety and depression, and improved physical functioning. And the well-being of students and learning communities is being supported through development of cognitive and emotional and social skills. We also had a focus on COVID-19, and what's interesting to see is that among a few of the research papers on how people behaved during COVID-19, cultural and especially creative activities were the preferred leisure of people during the pandemic. It was also the arts consumption grew during the pandemic, which I think it means something when we are thinking on long term of what people do when as a way to cope. And probably the most important finding is this, that when engaging with creative activities, people in those stress and unprecedented conditions found that they had more resources to come up with innovative solutions to their challenges. And this, as a society level, at society level, has important consequences on resilience development. One of our projects in this area is creating a space for arts and well-being in one of the local schools in Cluj, and which we hope is going to be taken over by the municipality and implemented and replicated in the other schools that they manage in the city. So I'm aware that my time has finished, so probably there's a lot of aspects to bring into discussion. I think I would rather pause here. I would leave these ideas on the screen and rather see if there are any particular questions or aspects that you would like to bring into discussion. I'm not aware if there's any more time left. I'm aware that we are now 30 minutes since I started. So I think if we have time left, I would be happy to take some interventions from the room. If not, I think moderators would let me know.
We are a little bit running beyond schedule, but it's a pleasure to listen to you. Sorry that you are not here with us. I want to still give the opportunity for people to ask you questions or to comment on something, so please do take the floor. I hope I'm not frightening you.
Thank you.
You have the time, I will give you the time.
Thank you.
Is there still any question? I guess everybody is here for long and we have to go for lunch, but still, please. Okay. Then I will say thank you. Or is there anything else you want to say at the end? There's no questions here from the audience. We are happy to hear you.
Well, maybe that's just one thing that I would like to add. Please. Is that in the Culture for Health project, we have already undertaken this extensive mapping process. And go on the website and either add your own initiative if you already have a project that deals with culture, health, and well-being. But you can also find inspiring initiatives there. There are more than 500 projects on culture, health, and well-being from around the world. I think this would be the place where I can leave the conversation now.
Thank you so much, Sarita. Much, and I hope next time you can come.
I hope to.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.
Can you show again us, please, the previous slide? There is here, yes, your contacts. Again? Can you please put your contacts again visible because people want to take them? Thank you so much.
Visible.
Yes,
Thank you.
Now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Enjoy your conversations further. Bye.
Tchau, tchau.
Faremos então agora pausa para almoço e vamos atrasar o início da tarde meia hora, portanto encontramos-nos aqui às 2h30. Até já.